Hi, guys. This is Carrie with Fullerton Professional Organizing. And if you're new here, this podcast talks about decluttering our faith, our home, and our business. Today, we have a guest, and I'm going to go ahead right in and let her introduce herself and tell her story. I might interrupt her just to clarify and, just out of curiosity, answer questions I might have as she speaks. But I'm just going to go ahead and let her get started.
Yeah, Carrie, thanks for having me. My name is Rachel Powell. I am the founder of Hope Speaker, but my story related to my faith and the work I do with widows and in suicide prevention goes back to when I met my husband, high school youth group. We married young at 19, and we were heavily involved in our church ministries. We loved the Lord, and we took on the care of my nieces and nephew,
Mhm.
who eventually all three ended up coming to be with us primarily.
Mhm.
So my husband and I took on three children. We went through school. I have been a registered nurse for 14 years, and he did his undergraduate, graduate, and PhD in civil engineering. And our life was full and beautiful, involved in church. He was
Mhm.
definitely a hospitality person. He loved the Lord, loved people. I was involved in leading worship. Um, I love worship. I love connecting with the Lord through
Mhm.
music, and it was a privilege to be a part of that ministry. We had our nieces and nephew with us, and then we had our own biological one added, and she was 1 year old.
Mhm.
So
Well,
we had four.
how long did you have your nieces and nephews before you had your own?
Yeah, so my oldest niece was actually born when I was a senior in high school at 18, and I started helping with her at that time.
Mm.
So, and like I mentioned, my husband and I were married at 19, and he just loved those kids. We were involved right away. So,
Mhm.
first one was born, and the next one came along. They were with my parents. It was my sister's children,
Mhm.
but we were heavily involved in taking care of them, having them more full time in summers, and then every weekend during the school year. Um, and then my third niece came along, and the tide kind of turned. We had been asking to adopt them and to have them for
Mhm.
years. And when
Mhm.
my third niece came along, she came right to us. So she was under a month, and the other two joined our house. And so we had them primarily doing all the school, educational, medical decision making, had them. And then we had our own daughter.
Mhm.
And so life was life was beautiful, but it was very
Mhm.
full.
Yes.
My husband struggled with an addiction, and in
Mhm.
the last year of his life, I don't know if it was the pressure of life. There was a lot of things. He had received help in the past for that and had years of sobriety, but when this rose again, um, it really just began to escalate out of
Yeah.
control, and it was a challenging time. He also had some mental health things going on in that last year of his life. And so, um, that last year was it felt kind of crazy making. Like, the picture that they give of the frog in the water, the boiling water. If you have
Uh,
boiling water and you throw a frog into it, it would jump out. But
uh,
if you slowly turn the
mhm.
heat up and
Mhm.
over time, that
Mhm.
frog will stay in there and boil. And our life was over time getting more and more chaotic.
Yeah.
So in that last year, with all of the things going on, things became abusive. Um, Within our marriage, it was very confusing.
Mhm.
With the dynamics in the church, I was asking for help, and it was falling on deaf ears because
Mhm. They bring
ideas
stability.
about roles in
Yeah.
marriage. And, I heard a lot of you need to submit
Mm,
and things really were at a point where they should have been referred out to other help. And there was protection that was needed for me and things that didn't happen. So in navigating all of these challenges and as things declined, we lost him to suicide in June of 2019.
mm,
And shortly thereafter went into the COVID pandemic. So I had
right.
4 children as a new suicide widow, and life became extremely difficult. It was a very, very dark time for me personally. I also became suicidal myself. I mean, research shows that people who lose a loved one to suicide are at higher risk. And research
Mhm.
also shows that widows, often in early widowhood, are at higher risk as well. So I
Mhm.
had a double whammy of both of those things as well. And
Yeah.
through a couple of extremely dark years of struggling, the Lord in this time gave me a vision. Not that I could clearly grasp it at that time
Mhm.
in the place I was, but He had showed me clearly that I was going to be giving hope to other people, something that I
Mm.
was severely lacking at the time. And
Yes.
He told me that I needed to keep living, I needed to keep going, and I needed to show others how. And so I held to that as a lifeline. And through years of a lot of wrestle and deep work and really intentionally
Mhm.
working on my healing, investing in that,
Mhm.
um, found that underneath the rubble of it all, where a bomb had gone off in my life, and it just seemed like I was sifting through it to try to find what was
Mhm.
left. Underneath the rubble of it all, there was still this foundation of hope.
Yeah.
And Jesus was like we were talking about a little bit before we started the recording, it went from being just knowledge and head knowledge, which is good and wonderful. My background
Mhm.
is a lot of emphasis in scripture and what is sound doctrine and knowing things, but
Yeah.
it
We
lacked.
know the word, but the depths of it, we haven't gone to the depths of it until we go through something, right?
Yes, it had to become heart knowledge
Mhm.
and that and experiential and having an experiential relationship with the Lord that wasn't just one way conversation, prayer being one way and then silent conversation, but really having a two-directional relationship. And through my work and investment and partnering with the Lord and what He has done, He proved so faithful. I have rebuilt a beautiful life that I love again. That I'm so thankful that I'm still here. I remarried a couple of years ago and added a stepdaughter in the mix. There's 5 kids now. Life is still
That's
full,
awesome.
and remarriage and blending is not for the faint of heart either.
Yes.
It's its own
It's
journey with
not that it
challenges.
got easier, right?
But it has a such a beautiful redemption to it,
Mhm.
and through that and through this vision and calling the Lord gave me, I left nursing to begin my business, and what I am privileged to get to do is to come alongside primarily Christian widows. I coach them one-to-one, and I also have a community for Christian widows online, a space where we can grieve with hope and where we can heal more deeply and where we rebuild with the Holy Spirit and His power to create a life that we genuinely want again. And also, I love to be involved and always will be in education and suicide prevention advocacy work. And that's what
Yeah.
I do
Well,
now.
I think that's really great. And it's a really needed because, like what you said, when you were going through what you were going through, there really weren't people jumping in to help, right? And I think when, let's see, about 28 years ago, maybe there was help out there for people that are grieving, but it wasn't as accessible, or we just didn't know. I know 28 years ago, I felt very alone
Mm.
in it, and of course, the Bible was misunderstood in those that did try to help me through it, which kind of made the grief worse because
Mhm.
before I was just grieving, and then I was trying to understand my faith through it. So I think that is very needed in the Christian community. Now, let me ask you one question before I let you continue. Why do you think, I mean, I think we know, but I thought maybe you could explain a little bit why do people that experience a family member in that has committed suicide, um, why does that usually, well, I don't even want to say usually because it sounds so negative, right? But maybe I'm still having a hard time saying this out loud. Why do, do the statistics show that um, other people will tend to gravitate to suicide when they've had a family member that has, instead of running away from it? I guess it's some run away from it, right? And some run closer to it. If I'm even saying that, it, I guess I hate these words coming out of my mouth, but yet that's the reason people need help, is because of people like me that are afraid to talk about it.
Well, it's a very it's a heavy topic, and
Mm-hmm,
I'm very open and honest with my story, and work through a lot of shame in my process. So
mm-hmm,
to me, I'm grateful to talk about these topics. But
mm-hmm,
yeah, for a lot of people, I'll interact with or even begin to talk to them, and they'll feel like don't know what to do. I mean, it's not. There's no shame in that. It's just what it
mm-hmm,
is. We don't often know what to do
mm-hmm.
with that, with the pain, with
Yeah.
the heaviness,
Or the
all
feeling of
of
negativity.
yes, it's been such a hush hush or shamed, secretive topic for so long. And some people still feel that way, but more and more we're making headway in having open and honest discussions about it, which is what we need because daylight is a great sanitizer. We bring things into the light, and the things that are hidden in darkness
Mm-hmm,
and that are secretive and these struggles. Um, that's part of what feeds it. And there can be so much aloneness
mm-hmm.
related to suicide,
Yeah,
whether
and
you're someone
shame.
who's struggling or have lost someone who's struggling, that these conversations are so important. So I appreciate you
Mm-hmm,
bringing that up. You know, hope, this idea of hope and hopelessness is not just this intangible concept. It actually is so very practical because hopelessness kills people.
mm,
And I I don't want to pretend that I know everything about suicide or that I can
mm.
consolidate it down into just a very simple thing because it's so
Right.
multifactorial. Um, there's so many different parts and pieces to that. There is the mental health side of
Mm-hmm,
things. I mean, some people have very real imbalances in their brain or things going on in their body. Some people have chronic physical pain that drives them to that. Some people have very deep emotional wounds or trauma of things that
mm-hmm,
need healing. Some people are struggling just with this overwhelming sense of aloneness and again not having anyone to talk to about their struggles. Some
mm-hmm,
people have had a major loss or just series of suffering, like thing
Yeah.
after thing after thing in their life that
Mhm.
it feels like they're battling against that
Mhm.
becomes too heavy.
Mhm.
But often at the end of any of those roads, and speaking from my own experience as well, both as a survivor to my husband's loss and personally, because in my struggle with it for years, I actually did attempt twice. I
Mhm.
can understand and empathize with this feeling of unbearable pain
Mhm.
and that there's just no way out. There can be this sense of this is my life that I hate things I don't want and this sense of powerlessness, like I can't change it. I'm trapped and
Mhm.
being alone and it that is where suicide it changes from being this idea of something like, oh, that's so sad, I would never do that, to something you consider, to something that becomes a possibility, to
Mhm.
something that becomes your only possibility, a solution
Yeah.
to your only solution, your only way out. It's been described as like on the tragedy of September 11th.
Mm.
When people were inside a burning building
Mhm.
and they jumped to their death.
Mhm.
You know, it a horrible, awful tragedy. No one woke up that morning thinking that they would ever do something like
Yeah.
that. And I'm using that as a metaphor with suicide.
Right.
It's like no one ever is born into this world even understanding what the concept means. Your
Mhm.
kids can't even grasp that. To coming to this place where when you feel like you're burning alive,
Mm.
and the suffering is so bad, the only way out is to jump.
Mm.
And so the work that I love to do is equipping people and helping them find those other ways out because
Mhm.
there are other ways. And to specifically get to your question, why are rates higher in survivors? Um, I talked about circumstantial drives and physical pieces and I believe there's also spiritual elements.
Mhm.
My husband was struggling very much with there's spiritual warfare things
Yes.
and demonic things going
Right.
on
Because the
and
enemy really is, for believers, out to kill, steal, and destroy. That scripture is a real thing. He
absolutely.
is after believers. I really truly believe the reason I lost my first child is because the enemy doesn't want you to call on the Lord. For sure. He wants you to feel like the Lord abandoned you, that God
Mhm.
has abandoned you. But I'll go ahead and let you finish, but that's just what goes through my head.
Yes, yes. And there's so many lies that come up in the struggle. And when you lose someone to suicide, it one of the tools that the enemy takes advantage of is it's almost like the door is cracked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I share as a prevention piece to keep to help people grasp, what that choice would actually mean when somebody goes through that door and we like to say died by suicide is often the terminology that we use now. Committed actually comes from there was a day and a time where it was like an illegal, you could be punished if you
Oh, okay.
attempted
That's where the word
suicide and did
committed
not
comes from.
succeed. And
Oh,
there was actually repercussions, criminal repercussions from that. And often in the suicide prevention community, looking at that and looking at the term committed and like you're committing a crime, like it's this willful intention to do something wrong, and understanding instead that it's this that people are not in their right mind
yeah.
and are deeply suffering who are there. We often use the terminology died by suicide. When somebody dies by suicide, it is like the door is cracked and it leaves the door cracked for the people around them. As awful as it is to be a survivor, and you would think, even in my own case, and I was an advocate for suicide prevention after I lost my
Mhm.
husband, and I was still struggling so intently myself because it takes something that is so kind of far out there. Like, again, I would never do that. And it brings it so close to home. Like
Mhm.
you lose someone so dear to you,
Right.
and they did
Become
that.
goes from a concept to something real that
Yes,
has happened.
and so close. It brings it
Yeah.
so close to you, and the door is cracked. And so some people go because they can't imagine doing life without the person. They
Hmm.
follow them because they want to be with them. So that's how the door is cracked.
Hmm.
Or they see that, well, they did that and it was awful, but everybody else is, carrying on, and I'm in so much pain. I'm gonna
Yes.
do the same thing to
I
be
have
done with the
felt that
suffering
pain
here.
as well. You feel like you're grieving, but
Mm,
everyone else is going on making babies
mm.
and doing all the things that people do. I definitely know what those thoughts feel like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it gets very the enemy uses all these things as hooks and in their own struggle or the struggle with grief or depression from losing
Mhm.
someone. There's lots of factors, but the rates are higher in loss survivors and in early widowhood. You're in such intense pain and grief. You've lost the person you love. You want to be with them, and now they've opened the door of possibilities
Mhm.
for a way of ending the pain of following, of being with the Lord, of and again, these things are all skewed into coming to a point where often when people are in that active state where they will attempt and or succeed, um, they're not in their right mind.
Mhm.
Um, it's a very brief period, actually.
Mhm.
Research has shown minutes to hours that you can have a general struggle with suicide, but when you come to this place where it is so intense, where you're ready to take action to do something like that, it's relatively um, short lasting. If we can help people to survive that,
Mhm.
um,
Those
we can
moments.
help the rates go down because
Mhm.
you're just not in your right mind. I was
Yeah.
not. It's not, and again, that can help with the guilt and the shame and all the questions that is normal to struggle with in suicide
Mhm.
loss of
Mhm.
is there something I could have done, something I should have said the last time that I saw them. I had people ask me, well, look at your beautiful family, why would someone ever do that, and
Mhm.
such it's such a selfish thing, and all of these ideas, and it's like it doesn't have to do with the worth or value of
Mhm.
anyone around you.
Mhm.
It wasn't that anyone wasn't enough. It was that that person was struggling so intensely
Mhm.
that that had become their only way out. It,
Yeah.
it isn't reflective of other people and their actions,
Mhm.
although people are often triggered into that intense window of time where they will act. But there's a lot of beautiful work being done, and I'm thankful to be a part of that and to have received a lot of messages that I've saved lives, and even have um, random people still will get a hold of me, or I'll get on the phone with someone to find out they are like right at that crux point of that
Mhm.
tipping point, the edge of the knife, and to be able to
Yeah.
be the one to recognize it, to speak to it without shame,
Mhm.
and to get other help
Yeah. And
involved.
they
And
have someone that they know can relate.
that
Because
gets it.
often when you talk, and I don't have the experience with suicide, I only have the experience with grief. But when you can talk to someone and they don't really understand the feelings, like for me, and some of it's not. Yes, it is the enemy and deception. Okay. We know that as believers, but sometimes it's your brain trying to protect you at the same time. Because when I
Mhm.
lost my first live birth child, I started calling my nephew his name and didn't even know it, had no clue until someone kept telling me I was doing it. And I remember even though as a Christian, we know that they're not still in the grave, we know that it's just a body, but I wanted to lay on the grave. You know, these are just things that come through your mind, even though you know that it's not a reality. Now, I never, I always worry about telling people stuff like this because I don't ever want them to think I was losing my mind. I wasn't losing my mind. I knew exactly that these thoughts were not correct, and so I was able to get past it. But I can see, how there are things that just pop into your head that aren't real, but it's still there. It pops
And
in.
I appreciate you speaking to that. And it's so important to normalize some of those things because like you said, there is often we feel like we need to hide that. And there were times in my grief where I felt like maybe I was going crazy. But to realize that is such a common experience in our humanness. It's so important for us to hold that we are spiritual and we're also human and not to be ashamed
Mhm.
of the humanness because we are spirit and we are eternal and they are no longer, as you mentioned, in a body, in a grave. And yet, in our humanness, like as the Lord knows because he came and experienced it,
Mhm.
he wept at Lazarus's grave. He
Yes.
experienced this
And he knew more than
depth.
anyone, right? He knew more than anyone that a Lazarus wasn't there, but he had that sympathy. Would you call it sympathy? He had the
Yes, and the empathy and the connection
Mhm.
both to his own humanity and the humanity of others around him to do what is human, which is to grieve. And one day we'll be fully in spirit and there will be no more mourning or tears or
Mhm.
pain, and that's wonderful. But in our time here, like we are embodied beings and
Mhm.
ritual and those practices that those tangible things are so important. The
Mhm.
funeral is for us, and it's important. The grave, that connection to their things and their belongings, and how we experience grief, and um, how we can actually create rituals to work through our grief and that our healing are so very valid. And if we try to just separate ourselves from our humanness, we're going to lack the ability to heal deeply with the Lord. And it's such an important part of what I do with widows because I truly believe that healing grief spaces can hold both, like where we can be very raw and real and authentic and honest about
Mhm.
our struggles with grief, our pain that we're in, what we're thinking, where we're caught up, and not hiding those things and not just putting religious platitudes over those things and not just sticking band-aids on
Mhm.
wounds that need the right treatment, right? As a nurse, it's like
Mhm.
you have a festering wound or you have an open gaping wound. You could try to cover it, you can try to hide it, you can try to move on. That is still there. And the pain
Mhm.
of these things is still influencing
Mhm.
your current day reactions, and you can plug your ears and close your eyes and pretend and try to hide, but you're still reacting out of this pain. Like, why not address it and be open and honest and having a safe place where,
Mhm.
like you mentioned, people can empathetically companion one another in their grief.
Mhm.
It's one of my strengths to be an empathetic companion in grief because sometimes that's the most healing thing, to cry and to say,
Mhm.
"Man, your life has been really hard." Like when we can meet each other there, it's
Mhm.
so valuable. And to hold
Mhm.
space for that and
Mhm.
not to get so lost in the grief that we do not make room for the other part, which is that there's still hope ahead and that there's
Mhm.
still healing and that there still is life here, that the Lord can restore the years the locusts have eaten, that He says He has goodness for us still in the land of the living, not just
Mhm.
when we finally die and are with them again, and but now and here and open to those possibilities. And it's so important that we can have both, because when people have not had empathetic grief companions, that's where they often become, defensive about it,
Mhm.
because what they have experienced is people minimizing and
Yes.
invalidating their grief and suffering. And
Mhm.
so then they find communities,
Mhm.
grief support, quote unquote. And some of those communities, I see it often. Um, can still be very dark. It's like I'm forever going to feel like my life is whole. I died when you died. It's broken. It's never gonna be right again. And my pain is always a part. And I believe we always are working through grief, but it's in a lens. They put it in a lens where it's like I will always be grieving and suffering, like having this unredemptive loss where there's no, like it's death without resurrection.
Mhm.
But when we can be the safe, empathetic, loving person who can experience that with them and hold to, and there's still more ahead. And this isn't
Mhm.
the end of the story. It's not that the loss isn't valid, the pain isn't valid, but it's just not all of the story. It's
Right.
not the end of the story. There is still
There's still
all of this
redemption.
goodness. Yes.
Yeah,
And
there's
that's
still
when we can
redemption.
make that transition, when we've validated and can honestly be there for people, then we can speak those things of hope and truth and life ahead in a way where people will actually be able to receive it. When you bypass
Right.
over people's pain and just try to push forward and push on and move on, and because we're actually uncomfortable
Mhm.
experiencing grief or pain, so we try to move them out of it. Um, we're not actually helping, like you mentioned. But
No.
when we can be there and we don't just stay there and fester in it, we can
Mhm.
apply the right treatment to the wound that can close. And we have a scar, but we have
Mhm.
healing, and
Mhm.
there's still beauty and health and hope that we can live in ahead. If we have both of those things in a grief community, in a grieving space, um, it can change the
Yeah.
outcome for people
Because
significantly.
a lot of people, and saying this gently to our listeners, I'm saying this gently. A lot of times in the Christian community, we believe that our faith should shut it down.
Mm.
But in reality, our faith just means that that God is walking through it with us. We're not shutting
Absolutely.
it down. That doesn't mean we have less faith. It just means that God is walking us through it. And redemption
Mhm.
also doesn't mean it's something that we had to repent of.
Mm.
Redemption is Christ walking us through something. Redemption just means he knows the end and we don't. And he knows how he's working to redeem it. If
Yes,
that makes
yes,
sense to
yes,
if that makes sense.
yes, and I love the way that you worded that. I often say, when people have these questions, which is a normal also part of
Mhm,
grief, when we actually come
mhm,
face to face with some of our worst suffering, is when we ask the questions of, how can a good God allow suffering, or how could he have allowed this to happen? Or I've tried to live my life for you. Why is this happening? Or I
mhm,
prayed like I did for my husband and for his healing, and this was not the answer that I had been
mhm.
asking for. I'll often say, God does not save us from the human experience. Like this isn't heaven yet.
Yes.
And we're often just bothered the most with these questions and with the pain when we finally come face to face with it. Other people through our whole life have been suffering awful things, but when it's
Mhm.
finally our turn in the fire, and we ask those questions, and that's normal, but it's so important to recognize, like you said, it's not that he's under some obligation to try to make this place heaven and protect us from all pain and suffering, like sin and the fall and the enemy. Like this is broken. This is
Mm-hmm.
part, Jesus himself experienced all of these wrongs and sufferings here, but he walks through it with us. It's
Mm-hmm.
that our hope in him changes everything as he is so faithful
Mm-hmm.
to partner with us that even in these broken things and even in the worst like death, there is resurrection life that comes through that. And I also really appreciated, how you mentioned it's our struggle and our processing of it is not something that needs to be repented of, because that's another huge
Mm-hmm.
piece of where I'm an advocate is because we often in Christian communities equate humanness with sinfulness.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
when
not what
we
the
do
word
say,
says.
yeah, and I want to clarify for our audience, when we say sin, we're meaning the original sin from Adam and Eve that entered the world. We're
Mhm.
not saying that it's your sin, but go ahead and continue.
Yes, I'm not that our sin is causing the suffering. It's but
I got
saying that
chills.
our struggle with with this process and being human isn't something that needs to be repented of. I think so often there's a misunderstanding of that. It's we do have our flesh, the Bible talks about where our flesh is and our the sin that we have and that we carry that we do need to repent of. But the things that we experience as our humanness, like
Mhm.
that we the emotions that we cope with and grief and having our rituals to work through, like those
Mhm.
things are not wrong. And
Mhm.
when we make our experience and our feelings and the sinfulness, then we just like we
Mhm.
were talking about head knowledge and heart knowledge, we just cut
Mhm.
them off from each other. And
Mhm.
that's why, and then we wonder why, like I know things, but I can't ever get it like to the heart level, to the heart
Mhm.
knowledge. Well, we've been cutting our head off from our heart. So that's why we struggle to experience God in a relational, experiential way. Why we struggle to know the truths in the Bible in an experiential way in our lives because we have believed that we're bad in what we need in our humanness. And so, not everything in our humanity is sin. Otherwise, Jesus couldn't have been fully human himself. He didn't come to save us from our humanity. That wouldn't have been good news. He came to save us
Mhm.
from our sinfulness, and he fully experienced
Mhm.
being human here
Mhm.
and was still perfect in God's eyes. So
Mhm.
those ideas perpetuate the shame that separate us from each other and that often make people feel so isolated in their grief and in their suffering.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. All right. Well, okay. Before I get to some of my light-hearted questions, the one question I have for you right now is what is something that you intended on saying to the audience that I didn't allow you to say yet? And then we're going to go into some light-hearted questions and then how to reach you if they need to reach you. But right now, what is something that I didn't, because I kept asking questions, which I'm not saying we did anything wrong. I'm just giving you the opportunity now to say your last thing to our audience before we go into the end of our podcast.
Sure, sure. Then I would love to encourage, since I'm a hope speaker,
Mhm.
and hope is very, very tangible and has major implications, like I said, into even our daily lives. I would love to leave them with some hope that whoever is listening and wherever you may be in your life, whatever you may be struggling with, whatever you may have done that is wrong, whatever you may have had done to you, or whatever you have lost, wherever you find that you're struggling, I just want to encourage you that your story isn't over yet, that today's reality isn't your forever reality, and that there is so much hope ahead, even to death. there is resurrection life. And if it's not good, it isn't finished yet.
Right. Even
And
if
that's
we
what I
don't
would want to
feel
leave them with.
it, even if we
Right.
don't see it, it's
He's
there.
working.
Just know that it's there, even if we don't feel it or see it.
Yes, he's so faithful to carry us along, and you will know. You will see. Right now, we see through the veil. We walk by faith and not by sight. But one day you will see, and one day you will know. So hold on to him and
Mhm.
trust. You are going to see and know, and he has not left you. You are so loved.
Yes, awesome. I love that. All right, now to get to a little bit lighter part of
Hmm.
the video, and going back to what I do, organization, just to tie my stuff together here. What is, and like I said, this is now a lighthearted question. What is one area in your life that is messy, and what is one area of your life that you're most proud of?
Mm. You know, what comes to mind right away is that both of those things are answered in the same the same place. And I would say my blended family, as I have remarried and have
Yes.
added a stepdaughter in the mix, having a family and having three of my four kids be biologically my nieces and nephew, and having one biological daughter, one stepdaughter, both an area of life that's messy is blending, and everyone having experienced loss that brought them together and figuring out how we love one another and who we are to each other. And also that's the area I'm
Good.
I'm most
But
proud of.
at the same time,
Yes,
right?
and that's true. And at
And
the same time, um, it is the area I'm most proud of because I strongly believe that, and I tell my kids this, our blended family is a reflection of the church and of the kingdom. It's people from all different places and backgrounds and struggles and losses. We're coming together to be part of the same family. So we're a picture of how the Lord grafts into his
ah,
body,
yes,
into the
I
same
love that.
body, and with the same privileges and rights and inheritance. And so I encourage my kids with that we're messy and it's not as easy and simple as this family and that family, and we get to be a picture of the church and of the kingdom because we
Yes.
are being grafted in love, um, together, and that kind of love supersedes bloodlines
Mhm.
and this group and that group, and we're all equal at the foot of the cross and equally part of God's family.
I love that. I love that. That's great. That's so awesome. All right. Well, now we're at the part, and guys, this, of course, is going to be down in the description, but let's leave them with how they can find you if they need you and all of the things that we're, putting in the description.
Yeah. Well, you can find me at hopespeaker.com. I am on social media, Instagram, hope_speaker, Facebook. I am Rachel Powell, and I have my business name as Hope Speaker on Facebook as well. I have a YouTube channel, so it's
Hmm.
Rachel Powell, Hope Speaker.
Oh,
But
awesome.
if you are definitely sister in the Lord, a widow, widows are my people. I love widows. I don't have to know anything about you to know like the depth of
Yeah.
love I have for my widow sisters, or for people who are struggling or have lost someone by suicide can relate to my content, or people who just want to be encouraged in hope in their faith. That's what I'm here for, is to boldly share hope.
Awesome. And that's why I'm here. Even though I do share about my business knowledge on Mondays, I purposely blend in my faith to give people hope, and to know that there is a God that cares about our needs, our messy. and
Hmm.
our unmessy parts of our lives. And that's really why I have my guests share one thing that is messy and one thing that they're proud of, is because we never want to present ourselves as having it all together. We're still
Mm-mm.
walking through this messy life with holding on to the hand of Jesus
Yes.
through it all.
Yes, and amen.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate that you came on. I thank you because I love what you're doing and I think it is just great. And I appreciate you. And guys, I will see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.